Hi, you know me. It's the old master bather, except no substitutes. And we're doing a couple of these quickly, catching up with this pointless show. And as I mentioned in the last episode, we're coming up on 5,000 subscribers. 5,000 subscribers. That's a huge something. I don't know what it is. It's either ridiculous that it took us so long to get to 5,000 subscribers, or it's a celebration of the fact that there are enough people out there who really just want to waste their time in the bathtub doing nothing fruitful with books. That it almost makes my heart glad to think there are that many useless people out there, and I'm not the only one. So we'll be having a 5,000 episode soon. I don't know what we're going to do. We always do something kind of special. Once we had a live chat-in show. I can't remember what we did. Sometimes we gave everyone a wish list. Everyone could ask me to do stuff. So if you got ideas for what the 5,000th episode should be, well, first, get a couple more subscribers for the show, and they don't even have to watch it. Tell them they can subscribe, but they don't have to watch it. I think that's a good offer. And then if you have something you want to do with the 5,000th episode, I'll entertain suggestions. Okay. Anyway, we're going to do these fairly quickly. We're talking today about a writer who I basically really love Iris Murdoch. And I think I've talked about this before. One of my favorite reading experiences was the first time I read Iris Murdoch. And this is the book I read. This is the exact same. This is the copy of it, too. It's called A Word Child. A Word Child came out in 1975, and she'd already been well-established novelist by that point. She wrote a fairly big book every year through a fairly long and successful career. And I remember very vividly, it was when I was first moving to London and living there. I used to spend a lot of time hanging out at the Klute's house, John Klute and Judith Klute, two of the most wonderful people I've ever known, who just, I don't know what I would have done without them, so I can say both of you. And I used to go up to the books. There used to be a big book stall, a bunch of book stalls. Even Klute's had a book stall up there at the Camden Market. And I'd look around. And I was reading a lot of British writers I hadn't read before, and I found a really nice first edition, kind of remaindered copy of this book. And it's all set in London, so that was part of the love of the book. It was just as I was falling in love with London. It was still the old ratty old London, pre-Euro, pre-EU London, where everything was just a bit of a rat bag. Everything about London, everything looked like it was falling apart, including most of the people. And Iris Murdoch's novel about a guy who's a total bastard. It's told from the point of view of a guy who's a total bastard, and then his wanders through London, particularly through Baker Street Station, which is one of the most confusingly nightmarish, weird places. It has a pub. It's like an underground with a pub in it. I don't know what Baker Street Station looks like now, but all I remember is getting lost in it constantly. And the Circle line, and that's the underground line on the front. And he's often going through this place. Anyway, I picked this up at some stall, and I remember going to the Klute's house, and they weren't there, so I walked in, and I sat in the living room, and I sat down with this book, and I must have read 100 pages in a couple hours. I didn't put it down. I just loved it, and I just read it for the next few days. One of the great reading experiences in my life. After that, I started buying everything of Iris Murdoch's, and if you see, I don't know if I can show you here, and you know how well we do this show. So I'm going to do this for you here. Hi, Dodo. It goes from here. Can you see me? Okay. I have her book. She wrote some on philosophy. So there's a book on Sartre. There's Flight from the Enchanter, and I actually have The Bell, which is one of her most famous books. First editions of those. I'll show those to you. And then it goes all the way across to here, to the book in the Brotherhood. I used to love these books. I still do love them. This is Cato, and they were all fairly small-sized books. She wrote lots of long books, and they were just beautiful books. And then her last couple of books were in big, large size, and I just don't care. I just get the paperbacks. But I basically had all her books. Here's her. Here's one of the earliest books I have, The Flight from the Enchanter. That's a first edition hardcover, which is, I think I read this. I can't remember now. And I did read The Bell, which is one of her more famous books, and for some reason I don't remember liking this as much. Anyway, every so often I read her, and I haven't read her in a long time. And I don't even remember which ones I've read and which ones I haven't. I enjoy them a lot. They all seem a little long to me usually, but if you're in the right mood, Iris Murdoch's great fun. I don't think I've read Henry and Cato. But again, it's another one of these beautiful old Cato and Windus hardcovers. Just beautiful. They don't make books like this now anymore. They're just beautiful books. This is 1976. I think it was a year after Word Child. A Word Child, I often make jokes about it. Her titles are just very boring. A Word Child. I would never think of picking up a book like that, just almost by accident, that I loved it. Henry and Cato is another boring title, but I quite enjoyed it. I have to say, it's about two young men who grew up next to each other. Henry is basically a well-off, what do you call him, a squire? His family are wealthy, they're big, wealthy, old sort of aristocratic, slightly family, or they have these big landed estate. And there's a mother. The fathers died when they were both young, and there were two sons. At the beginning of the book, Henry's brother dies quite young. And normally these wealthy families only leave they want to keep the estates intact. This is old England craziness in a way. Keep it intact so that monument to their family never dies and never gets broken up into subdivisions. And the brother gets when the father dies, the brother gets all of the property. And then when he dies, it goes to Henry. So the beginning of the book is Henry coming back from America, where he's been living with a really odd American couple who sound more English than American. They're kind of a couple of academics who sleep around, including with him, and they have these kind of open marriage sort of thing, which I found much more common in England than anywhere else. And he comes home to see his mother, who hasn't seen in years, and to take over this estate. And then the other boy is a guy named Cato, who used to be living next door, and I can't remember, his father has some relationship with the family, and he's from a poorer background, and he's gone into the Catholic Church and become a Catholic minister, and has been living in a kind of I don't know, what is it, charity house or a mission somewhere in London. I forget where it is in London. One of the things I love about some of her books is they all do take place in London, and they somehow give me a good memory of what the parts of London are that I quite love. This is a lot of Ladbroke Grove, which I don't know as well. I didn't know Ladbroke Grove as well. I walked around a lot but never quite understood it as well as I did North London and Central London, West End. But anyway, this is about these two guys and what happens in this kind of important part of their life where the one son when Henry comes back to take over this estate, and the friend whose sister has an affection for Henry, the friend is deciding he's going to leave the Catholic Church. Now she's sort of she's a slight I think of her a little bit like Dostoevsky in the sense that her characters are often engaged in philosophical discussions with one another and discussions about the meaning of religion and what religion is about. And then there's kind of a thriller element to most of her books as well. And this one, I don't want to give too much away, but Cato has been involved with a young man. He is a sort of, I don't think they ever consummate it, but he has a sort of a homosexual relationship with this young boy who comes to see him all the time. I think he called him Beautiful Dan or Beautiful Joe. And they're close to having a relationship and maybe moving in together, but the young kid is kind of crazy. And eventually Cato gets kidnapped. I don't want to give any more away than that. He gets kidnapped and they ask for ransom. But that's all kind of in the background. All the action stuff or the thriller stuff is kind of mild because most of it's about all the relationships between these people and Henry's desire to basically end everything, to just get rid of this estate, this whole family thing that's worn him down through his whole life. He just wants to sell everything and put his mother in an apartment and just get rid of it all. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. I have to say I did two things when I was reading it. One is, for a while I instead of smoking, I don't smoke marijuana, but occasionally I'll have a marijuana gummy bear, like a really tiny bit, if the day has been kind of long and I'm a little tired. And I remember normally I'll have a glass of bourbon. I'll have a glass of bourbon and I'll read, and it's kind of a good reading thing. I found that this gummy bear really helped me understand Iris Murdoch. First of all, she's really slow. It really it really slows you down. You have a little bit of THC in you, or whatever it is that's in these gummy bears. And I remember it would kind of slow me down a bit. I have a really tiny amount. And I would read for about an hour or two, sometimes very slowly. just a few pages and kind of sometimes even forget what I was reading. It's not the greatest attention stuff, marijuana, from what I can tell. But I did find it helped me read her well, because her stuff is very slow, but you're engaged in the characters, and the prose is something about the prose that's you just sort of enjoy reading the paragraphs. And then I went back to my normal standard glass of bourbon every evening when I read. And I went through it a lot quicker, but I don't know if I enjoyed it as much. So anyway, I don't know if this means anything to anybody, but I think having a little marijuana when you read Iris Murdoch, I don't know why. They kind of go together pretty well. That's my personal philosophy. Anyway, I have to click that box. I'm not advocating drug use, am I? But anyway, that's what I learned. I want to read just a passage. This is something about this passage really reminded me what I like about Murdoch and the way she describes streets and rooms and moving into rooms, and when people come into the scenes. She takes a lot of time with them and just somehow draws me into them. And I like the way she writes prose. So this is just a passage. This is when Henry has come back to his mother's house. It takes him about 80 pages for him to take the plane and come back and then go into the house. And the mother doesn't know he's coming. And he goes up to his old room, this bedroom he was raised in. And this describes the room. The room was spruce and tidy. The curtains pulled and the bed turned down. A hump denoted the presence, already, of the desirable hot water bottle. This is the class that has their hot water bottle every night. Henry put a suitcase on the floor and quickly opened it, as if it might be able to persuade him that he was in a hotel. He doesn't want to admit he's at home. He had took out his sponge bag and clutched it. Queen Anne had always been his territory as far as possible away from Sandy. That's the room. He had listened with silent childish rage to plans for pulling it down. Fortunately, these had always proved to be too expensive. Without looking, he perceived his surroundings, the massive chest of drawers with mahogany mirror on top, the rather ugly gentleman's wardrobe, the little writing table with the brass rail, the red leather club armchair, the wallpaper more faded, a brown lozenge pattern upon yellow, the narrow iron bed which he had insisted on keeping, the imitation Sheraton commode beside it, the dark brown, well-worn woolen rug upon the dark red, well-worn Turkey carpet, the rather pretty, upright Victorian chair not for sitting on, the stout Windsor chair with a cushion upon it. Even the cushion was the same. Who had slept here since he left? Almost certainly no one. The room was stripped to its minimum, as if in an attempt, without destroying it, to make it forget. But it remembered. The whole room becomes a character in it. Anyway, I that's my briefest effort to explain why I like her. And I've always enjoyed Iris Murdoch, and we'll get back to her someday. I would say if you haven't read her, I always try to get people to read A Word Child. The Sea is her most famous book, and it's similar to A Word Child. It's told as I recall, told from the viewpoint of a total bastard, a total selfish bastard, and somehow it just drives that character. But I like The Word Child better. Anyway, hope you're all well. Stay safe. The pets, I'm telling you, they're just so good today. Lucky's over here, Dodo's over there. Isn't that amazing? Don't expect this to happen every episode. Bye.